12 Republicans signed the Respect for Marriage Act. This undoes the Defense of Marriage Act and makes some other changes to the country's law that it is presumed will be signed by the White House. So the House is on board. The Senate is now on board. 12 Republicans joined the Democrats, and the law is going to end up on Joe Biden's desk. They've already indicated that they're looking to sign this thing. And so let's take a look at the Republicans who signed off and joined the Democrats. Many of them the usual suspects. We've got Blunt from Missouri, Burr, North Carolina, West Virginia, Capito, Collins from Maine, Ernst from Iowa, Wyoming, Loomis, Murkowski in Alaska. We've got Portman from Ohio, Romney from Utah, and Sullivan, Alaska, Tillis, North Carolina, Young from Indiana. So those are the Republicans, and they all signed off on the vote. We're going to listen to some of the debates from Klobuchar and Lankford. But first, let's take a look at the vote and how it landed before we take a look at the actual bill itself. This is what it sounded like in the United States Senate when the votes were tallied for the Respect for Marriage Act.
On this vote, the yeas are 62, the nays are 37. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
And it's going to be passed in the Senate. You can see 62 to 37. H.R. 8404, motion to invoke cloture on the Respect for Marriage Act, now passes into law. There was some debate or passes into, it's approved by the Senate, goes over to the White House to be passed into law. Amy Klobuchar was out speaking in favor of this. We'll listen to just a quick 30 seconds of her before we jump in to see what the law says. Amy Klobuchar arguing for the Respect for Marriage Act in the Senate today.
Mr. President, I rise in support of the Respect for Marriage Act, and I am proud to be a co-sponsor. I come from a state that has long been at the cutting edge of progress. Minnesota began protecting LGBTQ people against workplace discrimination in 1993.
That's a long time ago. There were a lot less letters back then.
At that time, it was the first and only state in the nation to outlaw discrimination based on gender identity. And 2 decades later, in 2013, we became the 12th state to legalize marriage equality. Across the country, as we know, many states have made advances. Today, 23 states have laws protecting people from discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. And in 2015, the Supreme Court recognized that the U.S. Constitution guarantees same-sex couples the right to marry. But as far as we have come, we still have miles to go until LGBTQ Americans can live their lives with freedom, authenticity, and equality.
And she's still missing some letters on there. So hopefully the bill, accounts for all of that. But that's Amy Klobuchar. Now, the bill actually, passed, as we saw, 62 votes for it, bunch of Republicans joining in. One Republican does not support the Respect for Marriage Act. This is Lankford. Senator Lankford from Oklahoma says, this bill was really inappropriately passed. We haven't even had an opportunity to debate this. We haven't had the ability to add amendments to this. We haven't considered things like religious freedom and how this bill might implicate private businesses and other people who might be implicated by this vast redefinition of the law. And if you recall, we just had the Dobbs decision, which came out, and that sort of reversed Roe versus Wade, which was a terrible decision because of the fact that the court created law out of whole cloth. Now what they're saying is that the Supreme Court might be on the brink of reversing these other sort of protections. And so the Congress is legislating this in order to prevent that from happening. Lankford says, though, we haven't given this the proper time and day. We got to give it more attention before we just pass gigantic definitions for all America.
We've had this text now for about 36 hours. It literally just got dropped on us. So for about 36 hours, we've been going through, and it's not long. It's 3 pages. Asking questions, how does it work? What happens with it? And several individuals have said, hey, this is a real problem for religious liberty. We should fix this. And others have said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make sure this is actually clear. Except, now that the debate has started, amendments have been shut out. There are no amendments. All of these gaps that I talk about for individuals, for small businesses, for individuals of conscience, for the right to be able to protect yourself if you're facing religious discrimination on this, for the limiting portions of in this act, or from explaining not arising from a marriage, what that may mean, the issue of principal purpose and not having to prove your principal purpose in a court of law is a religious issue. Everyone seems to nod their head and say, oh yeah, those are problems. Multiple members have brought amendments and said, let's fix it. And yet they're being told over and over again, no amendments. We're not going to fix it. You know what that tells me? These are not mistakes in the drafting. This was purposeful. That's what that tells me. Listen, I believe the rights of every individual should be honored. But this is not choosing to be able to protect the rights of every individual. This is saying some people are more equal than others. That's a problem.
In other words, the law is leaving open holes that allows certain lawyers and certain political arguments to be exploited to take the law further than maybe it is intended, or at least than it's written. When laws are big, broad, and vague, sometimes you can recraft them to serve your political ends. Now let's take a look at the actual bill itself. We have that here. Now this is something that we don't take a look at too often on the show, which is sort of why I wanted to go through this. This is the formal congressional record that was entered in on November 15th, and it comes over from the Congressional Research Service. And you can see sort of, this is how it's kind of the ongoing ledger for all of the activity in Congress. And you can take a look at what they're doing today. I mean, here we had Chuck Schumer. What are our senators doing on a daily basis? Well, Chuck Schumer was there today, and he issued a resolution called the supporting the designation of September 3rd as the National Sepsis Day. Oh, that's good. So we have a new sepsis holiday or something, a sepsis day. All right. You can see here that sepsis is a traumatic thing. It impacts 1.7 million people. It kills 270,000 people every year. And so our Congress got us a great new sepsis day. Yeah. And the Senate passed that into law. Amazing. Great news. Okay. So we have another bill, the Blue Star Welcome Week. Okay. Well, we love our military families and yeah, definitely supporting them. 600,000 active duty people. Great. We've got a whole new week that our, September 24th now is going to be Blue Star Welcome Week. All right. So we just get, a bunch of new weeks, or new days and stuff. Okay, that's great. All right, what else do we have now? Here we got. Okay, so here is Klobuchar. Now, this is the amendment and the resolution that is proposed. And so we can go up here and we can take a look at what this says for us. This is the Defense of Marriage Act. Several people are endorsing it, and it is in front of Congress. Now, here's where it says. It says Congress finds the following, right? This is the pretext for why they are doing what they are doing. They're saying, this is what we have found, right? We talk about legislative purpose here. You've got, before you can pass laws, right? Congress is supposed to have a reason to pass the law. And so they give us their findings. They say, no union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, union, sacrifice, and family. They continue, they say, diverse beliefs about the role of gender in marriage are held by reasonable and sincere people based on decent and honorable religious or philosophical premises, right? We can all agree to disagree. Therefore, Congress affirms that such people and their diverse beliefs are due proper respect. Millions of people, including same-sex couples and interracial couples, have entered into marriages and have enjoyed the rights and privileges associated with the marriage. Couples joining the marriage deserve to have the dignity, stability, and ongoing protection that marriage affords families and their children. That's the findings. That's the pretext. And so therefore, they're saying that full faith and credit needs to be given to all marriages. Here's the law. They're going to insert 1738B by amending the act as follows. In general, they say, no person acting under state law may deny. Okay, so one state cannot deny the full faith and credit to any public act, record, or proceeding in any other state pertaining to a marriage between two individuals, right? So no genders, no orientations, nothing in there. just two individuals on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, national origin to those individuals. A right or claim, so you can't deny anybody. So if one state marries a group of people, or a couple, in this case, two people, two individuals, on the basis of sex, ethnicity, national origin, they can't, one state has to recognize that proceeding in another state. A right or claim arising from such a marriage on the basis of such marriage would not be recognized under the law of the state on the basis of those individuals. Enforcement by attorney generals, private rights of action, meaning that any person who is harmed by a violation may bring a civil action in the appropriate United States court against the person who violated the injunctive relief. Okay, so right, this is almost sort of what the Texas abortion law did. Allows people to go file lawsuits if somebody is infringing on that right. So that's the enforcement mechanism, right? So it sort of opens up some additional ability for lawsuit. May bring a civil action. And so I think that's what Langford was talking about. You know, what happens if something goes on here and somebody's got like a religious objection to doing something like this, and then it opens them up to personal civil liability? Oh, there you go. Right? Marriage recognition, they say the United States Code is as follows. For the purpose of federal law, marital status, anywhere it's considered a factor, the individual shall be considered married if the marriage was valid in the state and it was between two individuals. The term state means any state plus DC and Puerto Rico. They say that in general, nothing in this act nor any amendment shall be construed to diminish or abrogate a religious liberty or conscience of somebody who is in the United States. Consistent with the First Amendment in the Constitution, all of these locations can still continue to practice. They shall not be required to provide services, right? So there is a little bit of a religious protection in here. You don't have to provide services for those marriages, but the state has to acknowledge it. Shall not be required. Any refusal under the subsection to provide those services shall not create any civil claim or cause of action, right? So now you get to that point. Well, what about, we're getting married. You got to bake me a cake type of a debate. Statutory prohibitions. Nothing in this act or any amendment shall be construed to deny or alter any other benefit created by any other right of law. And there's a severability clause there. So that's it. That's the end of the whole bill. And there's not much really meat and potatoes to it, actually. It's pretty small indeed. And as we heard from Senator Langford, the issue with that might be that there's a lot of questions about how this gets implemented and what it means. And so, of course, we'll continue to cover any litigation as it pops up regarding the Respect for Marriage Act. We'll see if this gets signed into law by the Biden administration. It certainly will, I believe. And then there may be some additional challenges. This is the type of stuff that may work its way back up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what the Supreme Court does with it. We'll continue to follow. Thank you for joining us as we do.